Okay, so let's start our today's session that is purely in context of certified internal auditor, and the concerned topic is traditional auditing. If we specifically talk about the traditional auditing, it is much systematic methodological approach. The point to be taken into consideration here is that if we talk about traditional auditing, so the major aspect is GRC, the evaluation of GRC. So that means if we talk about this GRC, which eventually stands for governance, then risk management, and then is the control processes. Now, this sounds really important. In traditional auditing, the major emphasis is on this aspect as to whether the oversight function by the board of directors of a company is carried out effectively or not. And the risk management, which is, if we talk about its designing, if we talk about its implementation, it is particularly carried out by the senior management, right? The risk management, identification, risk management, as such, the mitigation, how it can be mitigated and reduced, the steps involved in it, so it is taken care of by the senior management. And associated with the mitigating the risk management, so internal controls are needed, right? So again, these internal controls are eventually, they are implemented by whom? They are implemented by senior management. And what is the responsibility of you being an auditor as per the traditional auditing? To see to it as to whether all these GRC is to evaluate. The number one point is, if we talk about the auditor's responsibility as per the traditional auditing arena, is to evaluate GRC as to whether it is carried out effectively or not. And at the same time, you need to understand, my dear students, whatever compliances are there, they are carried out effectively or not. Compliances by the various bodies, regulatory authorities, as per the legitimate framework, whatever compliances are even required as per the laws, regulations. So they are ought to be carried out effectively. Let's take an example to throw some more light on this. If we talk about, let's say, internal control, let's suppose there is a godown, there is a company, PRT, PRT Private Limited. So this PRT Private Limited, it deals in, it's a tech company, right? So there is always an issue with respect to the confidentiality of information. Let it be loaded meanwhile. Okay. So confidentiality of information is always at stake. Confidentiality of info. And considering this, some internal controls have been levied so that, so there is, you know, excess has been limited by this organization. So some internal controls have been levied according to the responsibility. For example, if you are a person who should be given access only to a limited extent, you're not able to, have the information access beyond that level. So this is an internal control, right? So being an internal auditor, as per the traditional auditing framework, your responsibility to see to it as to whatever, as such, the controls which have been levied by the organization, so they are working properly or not, so they are effective or not. That is your utmost responsibility as an auditor. So not only is this, it is even the responsibility of you being an internal auditor to see to it as to whether the compliances of the structured frameworks and the standards. So these standards, they are specifically given by the associate bodies, professional bodies. For example, if we talk about the governing body instead of internal auditor, right? So the pronouncements, so they are issued by time to time, right? So that whatever audits are carried out, so they are carried out effectively. So the standard procedures are given by this body, IIA, which are referred to as, which are actually called pronouncements, just to maintain what? The consistency while performing an audit. Apart from this, the various fixed protocols, standard procedures, for example, if we talk about whenever you start carrying out an audit, you have to design an audit program. right? So there is an engagement letter. If there is a conflict of interest as such, so you need to see to it, you give importance to the your responsibility as an internal auditor first. Let's take an example in this context. This same PRT Private Limited, let's continue this example. If you are hired as an internal auditor in this organization, PRT Private Limited, right? So first of all, so there is always an engagement letter in which your responsibilities as an internal auditor, then each and everything is incorporated in a very detailed manner, in this engagement letter. What the scope of audit and the other things, so they are incorporated over there. For specifically talking about this engagement letter, your remuneration as an auditor, your scope of audit, whether you are being hired for a specific audit or to carry out the all the entire audit of the organization. So everything is incorporated in a very detailed manner in that very particular engagement letter. So suppose you have been hired, the payment terms have been decided, they have been incorporated in the engagement letter. Now, my dear students, here is an important catch. You need to design an audit program as to how you are going to carry out the audit. What are the steps involved in it, right? So this you also need to ensure simultaneously while carrying out your audit activities. Specifically talking about this audit program, so the documentation, inspection, observation, how the audit will be carried out. So it is as such penned down in that very particular program how you are going to carry out the audit, right? So all these are the standard protocols, or the say rather than the protocol, these are the procedures how the audit will be carried out, right? The fixed procedures. Now, let's take an example one step further to this. Obviously, this will be engagement letter would be there, audit program would be there. Let's take an example, conflict of interest example. Conflict of interest. If you talk about this conflict of interest, you need to understand in a very careful manner. If we talk about this, whenever you are having as such your personal interest conflicted with the interest you being as an auditor, then obviously just to maintain the integrity of the profession, you will not be as such taking the personal advantage, right? So this is a situation of conflict of interest, how you should deal with it. So these are the standard protocols on the basis of which you should actually be carrying out your audit. So specifically talking about the traditional auditors, you are carrying out audit by taking into consideration the GRC is evaluated properly. You are giving due importance to the standard norms, adherence to the protocols, procedures,